Right, so Rachel Reeves has had one heck of a time of it in the last few days, it becoming more and more clear to more and more people that she is the equivalent of an economic drunk driver heading for a crash. Unfortunately, she's at the helm of a supersized people carrier and we're all along for the ride. And another economic crash is looming before us in 3, 2, 1, and, well, we all know where that lands, and yet again it will be put upon us, the ordinary working class people of this country, to fix the damage. Our incomes therefore will be strangled, our services we all rely on will decline, as the rich will once again get away with being untouched, all in the name of continuing to sell that con of capitalism as the answer to all of the nation's ills. But on top of a disastrous economic policy, the consequences of that budget are already being felt. And that's the fact that Reeves is a woman in a position that she actually should never have attained, it seems, if her CV, or what is left of it that's still intact, can be believed. Now, the CV story might seem a bit frivolous to some people, especially people in the media, but it's actually really serious. We have somebody who has declared they have experience in things they do not, and when you reflect back on Reeves' own track record, and between the two you find yourself doubting anything she's claimed that she's qualified to do. And when you combine that with what is happening in the economy as well, the conclusion many will draw is, why has she not been sacked already?
Rachel Reeves should do the right thing and resign.
Oh, good Lord. We've all lied on our CV. I think she just needs to fess up.
It's not a question of lying on the CV, Nick. This is a case of deliberately misrepresenting your experience. I don't believe for one instance that Rachel Reeves is an economist and has been anywhere near the formulation of any kind of financial policy during her work experience. I think she's totally unqualified for this job, and I think she should do the right thing, which is to resign. A person who is in a position of financial trust cannot abuse that trust in any way whatsoever, and she has abused voters' trust immensely.
Right, so according to Nick Ferrari on LBC there, we've all lied on our CVs. Have we? Would that account for the standard of your show then, Nick? Did you lie on yours? I think that was a tacit admission there, don't you? But I certainly never have. I never want to do a job I didn't think I had the experience or qualifications to do, but it seems some, apparently like Nick Ferrari, certainly like Rachel Reeves it appears, have delusions of grandeur and ambitions that supersede ability. And so it very much seems to be the case as her CV gets torn apart publicly, entirely her own doing, no sympathy at all. But that's secondary to the damage she's caused as a result of getting where she is today, off the back, ostensibly in part at least, of that CV, because today she is Chancellor of the Exchequer, of course. Today she is in control of the nation's purse strings, and the fallout from someone seemingly underqualified for that job affects all of us. And that far and away is the much, much bigger issue. So I'll come back to that CV in a moment. We're now some 3 weeks past Labour's horrendous budget and omni-shambles of a budget. Probably the most appropriate word for it I can think of. I fancy given Reeves' effective copying of everything George Osborne did in his austerity programme. So close, in fact, Osborne himself has even referred to Reeves as a mini-me. When Reeves gave his financial statement upon ascending to her post, this was back at the start of August, Osborne on his podcast with the equally right-wing and equally odious Red Tory Ed Balls said it felt like a George Osborne budget or a financial statement from 14 years ago, and that there was nothing in it he violently disagreed with or would not have done himself. So seeing similar results to that, we perhaps shouldn't be that surprised at all. Osborne was also underqualified for the post of Chancellor. Allegedly, he barely passed his maths GCSE and his degree was in history. And now we have another Chancellor of the Exchequer, seemingly underqualified, who has taken a leaf out of Osborne's book, every page of it almost, perhaps because he got away with it for so long as well, and getting the post she now has is all that mattered to Reeves, not that she could actually do the job. The fallout from her economic decisions is what matters most, though, because we all have to live with her choices. And we're finding out now, as reality bites, what that really looks like. Reeves is tanking the economy, just like George Osborne did. Today, inflation has gone up again, now at 2.3% from a low Labour inherited upon taking power. Let's not say inherited from the Tories, they had nothing to do with it. Inflation was finally coming down anyway, recovering from other decisions in their disastrous administration. But when Labour came in, it was down to 1.7%. That was a 3-year low. And Reeves' budget has sent it straight back up again, all whilst GDP is in reverse, wages are at an all-time low in terms of growth, and unemployment is up in no small part due directly to the national insurance tax hike on employers who are across the country now cutting jobs. A wealth tax would have avoided all of that, but Reeves saw no reason to do that. I wonder if it's dawned on her now as to why she was wrong, but I very much doubt it. The main reason politicians don't tax wealth, of course, is because wealth buys so much influence, doesn't it? The last political leader we had that couldn't be bought and would have done the right thing was smeared as a racist and a national pariah, and sadly too many in this country bought into that. The status quo must be protected, and Reeves, despite her questionable qualifications now, is very much that. And frankly, that is the only qualification that really matters, to ensure nothing actually ever changes. Also coming in as factors against the economic backdrop Starmer and Reeves are presiding over are the fact that our energy bills are all up by an average of 10%, despite us being promised no hikes in those. Those still in work, who tend to be on the lower end of the wage scale, having to commute by bus, have seen themselves effectively get taxed because of that, for needing that type of public transport by a massive 50%. And with fuel duty frozen again, that's a big fat environmental kick in the teeth too, as far as going green is concerned. A big fat economic bill in the making if governments don't start taking measures to avoid climate-induced expenses later on. Short-sighted, short-term thinking, all to the benefit of the gas and oil giants. Those who commute by train have just seen their travel expenses hiked as well by 16%. Then, of course, there's the news that between 50 and 100,000 pensioners are set to be affected by her cruel cut to the winter fuel allowance. How fatal a move that's going to be amongst that demographic, amongst that number of people, I dare say we're going to unfortunately find out. Though I'm sure it'll warm them up no end to know that Ukraine are getting £3 billion from us annually for as long as it takes in their war with Russia. Well, how is that balancing the books? Then there are those who want to study for better paid jobs and their tuition fees get hiked by 13%, which is the complete reverse of investing in the nation's future. There is the freeze in the income tax threshold as well, which means as wages rise in line with inflation, fiscal drag drags more people into higher tax brackets or paying income tax for the first time. So that's an effective income tax rise on them anyway of 2% by stealth. And then, of course, all of our council tax is going up, varying from place to place, but most councils, cash-strapped as they are levying the maximum they can without a referendum of 4.99%. And if you don't pay your due within 3 weeks, the bailiffs can be sent round to collect the entire year's worth of council tax from you. Just one more abuse to kick you in the teeth. None of this, not one bit of it, promotes what Starmer and Reeves say they want most of all, what their number one priority is, which is economic growth. This is the total reverse of that. Now, I hate that phrase, economic growth, because resources are finite. Therefore, growth is always going to be finite. What should we strive for is economic health. And that can only come by ensuring it works for everybody, for all of us, and not just those at the top, who are the only people who ever seem to see their incomes grow. But that is at the expense of all of us who contribute to that wealth. These people are not growth creators. They are not job creators. They are not wealth creators. They are a vacuum that bleed the system dry because we make the economy work. We make it run when we spend our money and help create those jobs through helping businesses become successful. Economic growth is ground up, not trickled down. All of this is very much George Osborne style, of course. Those comparisons just keep on coming, not least in terms of whatever qualified him and Reeves to oversee the nation's finances in the first place. And that, of course, now brings us back to the matter of Reeves's CV. And it matters because she lied. And where fools like Nick Ferrari can dismiss that out of hand as something we all do, and it doesn't matter, it absolutely does matter, and it isn't something we all do. I certainly have never lied on my CV. I have my GCSEs, I have my industrial qualifications that qualify me as a fabricator and welder. I have a degree I did later in life in physics. That is what is on my CV, along with all the places I worked at in my history. I know someone will say it. What qualifies you to opine on global politics then? And the truth is, absolutely nothing except an interest and a big mouth. Or, in other words, an English GCSE, I suppose, and lived experience of being on the receiving end of poor UK politics. And a desire to call that out, because why shouldn't I? I want nothing more than to be held account by you who watch this channel for that, though. Rachel Reeves should want the same, but she chose to lie on her CV and therefore brings into question literally everything else that might be written on it. She claimed to have worked as an economist at Lloyds Bank Group, the Halifax Bank of Scotland. She did no such thing. She worked in admin, was mid at that reputedly, along with working in IT support. She was also working as a complaint support manager at one point, and that resulted in the director of banking operations weighing in, a guy called Kev Gillett, who not only made it quite clear that Reeves was not an economist, but was even embroiled in an expenses scandal. He posted on LinkedIn saying, "Can my network please share this factual story? Back in 2009, Rachel Reeves worked 3 levels below me. Just facts. She was a complaint support manager at Lloyds Bank Group, Halifax Bank of Scotland, not an economist. Nearly got sacked due to an expenses scandal where the 3 senior managers were all signing off each other's expenses. Narrow escape. Then had lots of doctor/dentist visits, so was followed. Turns out she was doing Labour Council business. When shown the facts, she resigned. Reeves was of course elected as an MP the following year in 2010, so the Labour Council business evidently paid off doing that. But what didn't pay off is that over the course of that first Parliament, or certainly at the end of it, due to a Freedom of Information request made in 2015, it was revealed that Reeves, this economist, was one of 19 MPs who had had their parliamentary credit card suspended for unauthorised spending, not able to prove the spending on it, and ended up owing more than £4,000 as a result. She can't seemingly manage her own expenses, despite all those claims of having sat at the kitchen table with her teacher mother watching her work the bills out as a child. It didn't seem to apply to public money when you were able to spend that on a credit card, did it, Rachel? And all of this ultimately culminates in the public thinking that an underqualified liar is now in charge of the economy, leading the country with another rampant liar like Keir Starmer. How can we possibly believe anything they say? And when Reeves's decisions directly impact the lives of tens of millions of people in this country, how can she possibly stay in post? And as for Starmer, well, his lies have just blown up in his face after refusing to consider the genocide in Gaza to actually be a genocide. Well, he thought differently 10 years ago when he was giving evidence himself at the International Court of Justice on behalf of another country on what was and was not a genocide then. And well, if you haven't seen for yourself the footage of his hypocrisy there, then do not miss this video recommendation as your suggested next watch. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.